Hey guys, Level Cap here, and today I want to talk about broken communication meta in Battlefield 5. What's that mean exactly? Well, this game has gone through a lot of design changes compared to previous titles, with far less development time to boot. And now that we've been playing the game since November of last year, it's clear that some of these design changes haven't affected gameplay in the way DICE was probably hoping they would. I believe there are gameplay mechanics put into the game in order to solve specific problems, but players never use them as intended, and thus the game meta is broken or just not working as DICE initially intended. And there's many aspects of Battlefield 5 that could fall into this specific problem area, but the big one I want to address is the spotting system and how it's supposed to be heavily tied into the use of roles, and how ultimately I think DICE's vision for spotting never really panned out, and now we're stuck with, well, essentially broken meta. Now, removing 3D spotting in Battlefield 5 was a big change, because for many years before, we'd been using a universal spotting system that allowed you to ping enemies so that you and all your teammates could see them clearly marked. Every class in the game could do this with the press of a button, no weapon swap or gadget required. This certainly wasn't a perfect system. It caused issues like being able to spam the spot button to see where people were hiding in bushes or even behind smoke grenades, and despite DICE's many attempts to fix that part of the problem, it never really quite worked out as intended. It was always so rampant that in many cases, my friends and I just called Battlefield games Triangle Shooter 3000, because a spot resulted in a red triangle above an enemy's head, and that's all anyone ever really shot at. So instead of scanning the environment for a silhouette of a soldier or looking through dense foliage for something that stood out, you mostly just shot at triangles. Not exactly an immersive experience, especially for a game that's always had pretty good visuals overall. It felt silly to shoot at UI indicators on the screen. However, the plus side of the system was that in-game, an entire team of 32 players had a fast and easy way to communicate enemy positions to each other and get points for doing so. Tanks were spotted quickly and often focus fired, annoying snipers were spotted and air power could zero in on them or tanks could roll up on them. Soldiers and vehicles had an easy way to communicate with one another, and it often felt like the whole team had better cohesion because of it. Not great cohesion or even good cohesion, but certainly better than what we have in Battlefield 5. Now, the spotting situation in Battlefield 5 has many problematic layers to it. First of all, the visual clutter in the game has increased by a significant margin since previous titles. Environments are more realistic and complex, and soldiers now have tons of camo options and can even make their colors look more like the enemy teams to really add to the confusion. The lighting system also doesn't really help out with soldier visibility. There's more particle effects ever than before, and prone players who don't move are often mistaken for dead players. So the visuals have essentially been upgraded to look more real, which in turn results in difficult visibility and target acquisition. Then on top of that, spotting has been removed from the single button push for all classes and instead has been made a gadget option for the recon class. So what used to be a push button mechanic for all classes at all times has become something that only the recon class can do if they switch to a spotting scope, and that's provided that they actually have the scope equipped, which they most likely don't because there are more enjoyable gadgets to pick from. And mind you, at this point I'm not arguing for the return of classic spotting in Battlefield 5, I'm just trying to illustrate how drastically the situation has changed, not only with visibility getting far more difficult, but the ability to actually spot being reduced by a massive magnitude, maybe 10% as much spotting as there was previously. So combining those two factors together has made a sweeping change in the overall meta. And here's the kicker though. DICE clearly understood at some point during the development that they couldn't just trash spotting mechanics and not have team communication just completely deteriorate. They did have a plan to replace quick manual spotting communication with different spotting tools. Some of those tools are actually built into the roles of classes and were probably expected to get much more use on the battlefield. Now, even if you're a veteran player, you might be thinking, roles, what are those again? And I wouldn't blame you for not knowing. DICE's UI does not really facilitate role usage. It's annoying to switch your class role and annoying when you forget which one you have selected. Most players, myself included, just stick to the universally most useful role and never really switch between them. Only recently, with the addition of the P08 carbine for the Recon class, did I even consider switching to the Pathfinder role over the Sniper role. But even so, I then forget to switch back to Sniper, and I get really annoyed when I don't have access to the same abilities because I forgot to switch my roles because the UI doesn't really communicate things very well, and it makes it difficult to switch back and forth. It's just an extra step of something you have to unequip or re-equip in between lives. It gets really annoying. So, how are these abilities supposed to tie into the spotting system anyway? Well, two of the most used ones are the Sniper role for the Recon class and Machine Gunner role for the Support class. The Sniper trait, Eagle-Eyed, automatically spots anyone you have shot. So if you're sniping long range and you hit a target but don't finish the kill, they then become spotted, so you can more easily hit a follow-up shot, or a teammate can see the target and assist with the kill, earning you some spotting assist points. The Machine Gunner role for Support automatically spots anyone who is fully suppressed by your weapon. So lots of shooting into groups or at players behind bushes can result in a useful spot for you or your team. Not too bad really, but it does require a decent amount of shooting before a spot will actually appear, so it's not as useful to a skilled support player who usually kills their targets quickly. Unfortunately, because it's not the default role that you unlock, I don't know how many people are using the Machine Gunner role. Perhaps not that many overall. I do see the spots every now and then, so I know some people are using it, but I don't think it's as common as it probably should be, since the Engineer role is the default role, and so if things are getting reset in game or some of your class properties are reset, there's a good chance you've been just defaulted to Engineer and forgot to switch over to Machine Gunner if you had switched to it at one point in the past. Now, a role that rarely gets used is the Assault class's Vehicle Buster. This role comes with a trait called Vehicle Painter that allows you to automatically spot vehicles every time you damage them while playing with this role equipped, which is good because there needs to be more ways to spot vehicles in this game. Currently, the Recon is really the only class I think that can do it. So there's not a lot of ways to spot vehicles and communicate vehicles. The only problem is that the Vehicle Painter trait, although good, is only useful, 5% of the time you're playing, provided that there's vehicles on the map that you're playing on, provided that you're able to fight and actually damage vehicles. And playing with the light infantry role instead gives you a lot more ammo to work with, so rarely do I ever pick the Tank Buster role, and I feel like most other players are probably doing the same thing, just not using that Vehicle Painter trait. Now, the Medic class does not have a spotting ability at all, which might be fine if other classes' spotting abilities triggered more frequently and were more useful. And I think that's ultimately one of the main issues with spotting in Battlefield 5 is it's designed in a way so that if you're playing your class in a very specific way that I think DICE imagines you should be playing, you start to spot things for your team. But unfortunately, the Assault ability is never triggered, and the Support ability is only useful in very specific situations like extreme choke points. Now, of course, the Recon has spotting flares, which are probably the most widely used spotting mechanic, and one of the few that can actually be used with specific intentions and skill, where others are designed to trigger automatically when you happen to be in combat. So in previous games where spotting was done with actual intention of communication, in addition to having things like spotting flares, it's now become an automated, somewhat convoluted process and happens with far less intention. If I see a giant Tiger tank sniping my team from 400 meters away, all I can do is mark it for my squad mates who likely can't contribute to killing it anyway. I have no tools to tell the pilot flying overhead with the bombs to go take out that Tiger tank unless that pilot is in my squad, or I'm a Recon class with a spotting scope equipped, or I'm an Assault player with the anti-tank role equipped, and I can hit it with a Panzerfaust from 400 meters, which is already very unlikely. So there's really not a lot of tools that I have available to say, hey, guy on my team who has the ability to kill that tank over there, go kill it. That's kind of gone from Battlefield 5. And it's clear that DICE's vision of how all this was going to play out was a lot different. 3 of the 4 classes are supposed to be contributing regularly to the spotting meta, but really only one of them does as the recon class, and that's with the gadget and not with the automated ability. And it was also clear that DICE had plans of releasing many more class roles as they sort of demoed before the game launched, but it seems like they scrapped that idea, probably because nobody was switching between them regularly because of the UI issues and just sort of the cumbersome nature of it. Now, of course, it can be really difficult to anticipate how game meta is going to play out, and I'm always willing to give developers for integrating or introducing new systems that just don't go as intended, as long as they recognize those in a timely manner and come up with a backup plan or fix the problem. But DICE hasn't really talked about roles openly with the community yet, how the roles have basically failed, and if there's some sort of backup plan to integrate spotting mechanics or communication meta into the game once again. I'm not even saying that we need to bring spotting back in a big way, but this game lacks severely in terms of team communication. Specifically with vehicle stuff, but also just in general. How do I tell the guy next to me who's not in my squad that there's an enemy in the building in front of us? I can't really. There isn't an integrated tool for doing so other than like opening up chat and like trying to type something in team chat and hope that he knows. Like, it's just totally unrealistic for that. And this is a major problem with the game right now, and one that DICE doesn't have a solution for yet and hasn't really addressed. Now, I do have a couple ideas for potential band-aid fixes. One of them would certainly be getting some of those class traits in the game all the time. I think having multiple roles in the game because of the current UI design is not realistic, and all the traits should just be merged down into one class role for the assault, for the support. I think the assault should always have vehicle painter active. It's one of those things that's so situational that nobody's ever going to switch to it at the right moment when they need it, hence never seeing those kind of spots on the battlefield. Just give assaults always a vehicle painter role. Similar with support, always give them the suppression spotting ability. They should not be running without that at any time. I feel the same with the recon's spotting ability while damaging. Don't make people choose between Pathfinder and that. Just give them the ability to always spot, have that baked into whatever role that they're working with. It should just be a class trait that is not baked into any sort of role altogether. So that would be my first step to the solution, is make sure that these roles that are integrated with the spotting system are always active no matter what. You could take that same concept further and look at gadgets like the spotting scope that most people aren't going to choose over more fun gadgets like the spotting flare, and just say, guess what? The recon always has a spotting scope. It's going to be this button. You can use it whenever you want, and that'll just be one of the recon's baked in abilities. That would probably add a lot to how much distant vehicles are getting spotted for teammates to see or for pilots to see, and just help with a lot of that vehicle communication. Because generally speaking, I wouldn't use the spotting scope when trying to shoot one enemy in the distance. I'd just try and kill them. But if I do see a massive army of people moving, then that would make sense to use it then, or when I see a vehicle, then use it then. Since the recon really can't contribute much to killing vehicles, give them an always usable spotting scope. I have seen some community discussion about revamping the general pinging system to be more useful, more communicative, to be visible to more people on the team or proximity people. Like, there's a lot of good ideas out there for trying to revamp the pinging system, which is really not that useful when it's only people in your squad that see it, especially since often your squad mates and you are in different areas of the map. The pings have almost no use to them. So seeing DICE revamp the pinging system in general to be a better team communicator would be another good step to take. I hope this is something that DICE is willing to talk about in the near future and willing to look at doing a complete overhaul to the team communication system, looking at roles again and whatnot. What do you guys think? To me, this is one of the big issues with Battlefield 5 because communication is so important for a large-scale game full of random people. You need to be able to communicate with them easily, effectively, and voice comms, I know, is not the solution for that. So what else can we do? I think there's a lot of good ideas out there. I'd love to hear your ideas if you have them. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.